You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves 3-game win streak. It's snapped by OKC. Final score versus the Thunder, 113-105. What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow on X if you haven't already, at JRBorman13. And Jack, lots to get into, including a third quarter collapse, plus another great bench night that kind of kept them in this one. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, man, Wolves coming in on a heater, 3-game heater, that is, looking for number 4 straight versus the hottest team in the NBA, the Thunder. They were 16-2 coming in their last 18 games. First meeting between these two teams this year. No Alex Caruso tonight, no Chet Holmgren still for OKC, no Rob Dillingham for the Wolves. Wolves come out looking sharp, right? Moving the ball well, shooting the ball well, good defense, got up 12. They go up 6 at half. Then the wheels fall off. 43-23. They get outscored by 20 points in the third quarter. In fact, the Thunder had 20 points off turnovers alone in the third quarter. Wolves only had 23 points in that third quarter altogether. That was kind of the story, kind of the A topic. Turnovers, points off turnovers. Wolves kind of could score late, but couldn't stop the Thunder when they needed them to. SGA was a monster, as always. Wolves lose this one. They drop to 17-15. That 3-game win streak is snapped. What do you think, Jack? Just kick us off. Biggest takeaways, kind of your A topics, first and foremost.
Yeah, for sure. I think you got to give all the credit in the world to the Thunder for the way that they totally flipped the switch in a way that the Timberwolves fans became accustomed to seeing last season, with just swarming defense that was probably a ton of fun to watch if you were a Thunder fan. And they flipped the switch in a way that you very rarely see from teams in the NBA. It takes a lot of defensive horses that they have to be able to do what they did. I mean, between Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, Kenrich Williams, Jalen Williams, small Jalen Williams, Isaiah Hartenstein, SGA played pretty well defensively, just creating havoc and all using their length. And they all have excellent timing when it comes to trying to strip the ball away from guys that are putting it on the deck. And you just cannot be lackadaisical and soft with the basketball when those guys are around you in the third quarter. And that's exactly what happened in the third quarter. And I think it highlighted a pretty key weakness for the Wolves, in that they just don't have a lot of primary ball handling. I think between Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, especially, those guys are all, for the most part, secondary ball handlers. And it was a night where, I don't know that you would have gone to Rob Dillingham, but he is a guy that certainly has a better handle than all of those guys, and certainly is a little bit closer to Mike Conley and his ability to handle that ball pressure. And that's something that he saw a lot of at Kentucky last year as a small guard. And unfortunate that they didn't have him tonight, but I don't know that Finch would have trusted to go to him in that situation necessarily. But it was a 22-3 run at the start, to go from down 12 to up 7 for OKC. It eventually balloons to 32-8. Chris Finch only calls one timeout during this stretch. And I did not listen to Chris Finch's post-game press conference, but I would imagine that Finch said something about needing to kind of let this team figure it out on their own, as a team that kind of needs to be in the foxhole with one another and just kind of learn how to crawl their way out of it. And I certainly would have liked to see him call a second timeout at some point in there, because I thought it got a little bit extreme, especially towards the second half of that third quarter. No question about it. But again, I think it also highlights just how far Anthony Edwards has to grow as a playmaker and really too as a scorer when things start to hit the fan, and not just in the fourth quarter. The Timberwolves had 10 turnovers in that quarter as part of their 24 turnovers for 31 Oklahoma City points in the game. But Ant, like I said, just isn't there as a playmaker, and his scoring too really disappeared. He didn't take a single shot attempt in that third quarter. In the second quarter for Ant, he had his sixth quarter this season of at least 10 points in any one quarter. He scored 11 in a row at one point in the second quarter, but he only scored 9 points in the rest of his 32 minutes on the floor. And for Ant, I understand that OKC did a great job of building that wall against him. And especially in that first quarter, you saw the way that they were able to do that with all of their different defenders. They put a bunch of different guys on Ant between Dort and Wallace and Jalen Williams, and then, bringing Isaiah Hartenstein to double him and not guard Gobert. So I understand that there was a lot of pressure on Ant, but I mean, there's also a lot of pressure on SGA, and he still figured out a way to put up 40 points tonight for the Thunder. So I think for Ant, it's just about finding ways to still be productive, even when the defense is really hounding you. And I know he was 6 of 12 from the floor, 4 of 7 from 3, but you've got to shoot more than 12 shots. Just find a way. And part of that is on Chris Finch too, for not being willing to find ways, or maybe not being willing, but not finding more ways to get him easier shots. And Ant's been a tremendous 3-point shooter this year. And I think finding ways to run him off screens and get him more involved in those stretches, really needs to become more of a thing. I think, if you want to try to help get it back into the game. And then beyond that, I just think, it was 43-32 or 43-23 Thunder in that third quarter. They decided to make all their 3-pointers in the third quarter too, which was kind of a bummer, considering that they were 3 of 19 from 3, 15.8% in the first half. And then they were 7 of 11 from 3 in the third quarter, 16 of 21 overall from the floor. It's just amazing efficiency. And it's pretty easy to create a lot of wide open spot shots, especially from 3 when you're turning the ball over as much as the Wolves were. And a lot of those 10 turnovers were live ball turnovers. And for that to be the case, it gets really tough to get matched up in transition consistently against a team that's really, really unselfish and shares the ball and is excellent in transition. So it was just kind of a bummer that all of those made threes came in bunches considering in the first half. I'll get to it a little later, but did a great job of preventing quarter threes and forcing the Thunder to play in the middle of the floor, and stayed home on shooters for the most part. But just kind of all unraveled at the wrong time. But again, I think you have to give the Timberwolves a lot of credit too for the way that they responded in this game. I think a lot of fans are probably expecting that the Timberwolves are just going to kind of roll over and lose by 20 or 25 and just kind of get lost in the sauce that the crowd created on the road in Oklahoma City. And that's not at all what they did. I thought Dante DiVincenzo was tremendous in the third quarter of just kind of, he had a 3-pointer that he made. I think he had another tough layup, made a couple of free throws in that third quarter in the midst of the storm that I think really helped keep Oklahoma City, helped keep it at 12 instead of 18, 19 points. And then from there, Naz Reid was tremendous in getting some buckets in the hole in the early part of the fourth quarter. And the defense really turned up with that DiVincenzo, Edwards, McDaniels, Reed, Gobert lineup. Those 5 had 28 of the 30 points in the fourth quarter. And it was a 12-2 run for the Wolves from the 8-minute mark to the 4-minute mark, during which OKC was 1 of 8. I thought that lineup was a really good mix of enough offensive scoring talent and spacing to be able to open things up a little bit more for Ant to become a playmaker and get some open looks. But also to be able to run a little bit and still have a really good defensive 5 off to be able to fly around and cut off some drivers and help the Timberwolves kind of increase the pace and be able to play off of stops a little bit. So for them to be trailing as much as 14 in this game and be able to cut it down to 3 at one point and really make it a game and have a really professional and competitive response, I think, that was pretty important as well.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. There's still plenty more I want to get into here. Let's jump over to segment 2. Plenty more, again, on the second half collapse and what they did well in the first half as well. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, they're giving you a chance at a huge return. It's a monster return. It's their best promo I've seen this year. $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. With FanDuel, when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $250 $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards MVP odds, they're dropping. They're at 20-1 now, but it's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, let me ask you this, because obviously, it's a disappointment to lose, especially lose the way they did, up 12 early, up 6 at halftime. But was tonight more of a case of, I don't know, OKC just being kind of on another level than everyone else right now, kind of putting that on display tonight? Because they did some things that just, it almost felt like it was unstoppable at times. Like their third quarter defense, I mean, that was nightmare fuel. So many forced turnovers, which I know you're going to get into a little bit more in deep dive. But what's the litmus test say? That's my question. What's the litmus test say after this one? If you're a Wolves fan, how much does this, it's only one game, but how much does this one game kind of move the needle back for you?
I don't think it really moves the needle back at all.
Okay.
For me, in terms of what I think about the Wolves. I think if anything, it showed that this team's ceiling is still pretty darn high when you consider the way that they played in the first half defensively, and then you also consider
the way
their bench.
Yeah.
Their bench is really been excellent, and they were excellent again tonight. They were 43, or they won 43-25, and I just don't think there's a whole lot to hang your hat on if you're a Timberwolves fan. This is they had one bad quarter for sure, no question at all, but I don't think there's anything there that causes me to have more concern than I had coming into this game. I thought there was more good than bad in this game. And sure, it was a really rough third quarter, no question about it.
Again, against a really, really, really dominant team, right? Like the hottest team in the NBA too. So you got to give them some flowers there as well, too.
Yeah, I think, again, there's no shame in losing a game to Oklahoma City. I think there's probably a little more shame if you just completely roll over and lose by 25 or 30 or something like that. But again, the way they responded was great. I thought the bench again was excellent. Nas 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 stocks. He did have 4 turnovers to 1 assist, as did Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I thought it was a much better first half than second half for Nickeil. I think he really, really struggled when the ball pressure got ratcheted up, and that was why Finch really went to Dante DiVincenzo over him. Dante had all 10 of his points in the second half, 4 assists, 1 turnover, and that 1 turnover was on that little dump off to Gobert, which you could dig DiVincenzo a little bit for the decision to drop it off to Gobert there, but that's something that Gobert's kind of got to be ready for, I think, especially when you consider how frustrated he's been over the lack of touches at points this year. That was Dante trying to get Rudy involved in a dump off situation for a dunk there, which we saw Rudy get involved in a little bit more in the second half. And again, I just thought the composure that Dante played with in that third quarter was really important in helping set the tone and prefacing what became a really strong response in the first, 9.5, 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. And then Josh Minott, again, I thought was really, really good. It was a bummer that Finchy couldn't find more minutes for him in the second half, because he looks really, really comfortable out there on the floor. He had 6 points and assists, and his activity level was really, really high. There was a point in the second quarter where I don't remember if it was first quarter or second quarter necessarily. Yeah, it was early second quarter. The Thunder played a 2-3 zone against a lineup that had Alexander Walker, DiVincenzo, Minott, Reed, and Gobert. And they stuck Naz Reid in the middle of that 2-3 zone. And Naz did a good job kind of attacking the low man, the kind of low center man in that 2-3 zone for a couple of buckets. And then Josh Minott did a great job of cutting from the corner. When Gobert would go up to set a screen, Minott, perfect cut to a point. One of them was where DiVincenzo hit him for a lob dunk, and the other one, Naz hit him for a lob dunk after Naz caught it in the middle of the zone. And those are exactly the types of plays that you need Josh Minott to make, and plays that Jaden McDaniels has not been making quite as much, at least offensively. I think Jaden, to his credit, has done a much better job rebounding the ball of late, and has been awesome defensively, but offensively, those are the types of things that this team needs from that role. And Josh Minott, for my money, has done a better job of kind of doing the little things offensively in that role than McDaniels has. And we haven't seen those two match minutes at all. They haven't played together. And so it's pretty clear that Minot is the backup for McDaniels rather than Alexander Walker is at this point. So, maybe if we see McDaniels in foul trouble, that's when we'd see more Josh Minot minutes, or if it's a team that, has a lot more wings and maybe Alexander Walker doesn't play quite as well against wings and you want to see more Minot than Alexander Walker. I think we have a pretty interesting case where that could make sense coming up here on Thursday night. But again, bench was great. And then I thought the defense in the first half was awesome for the Wolves. Oklahoma City turned it over at a rate higher than they normally do. They turned it over on 7 of their 50 possessions. It's a turnover rate of 14%, which is significantly higher than their turnover rate of 11.5%. So far this season. And for context there, league average and turnover percentage is about 15%. So it's still a little bit lower than league average, but that's a good mark to have the Thunder at. And then there were 3 of 19 from 3 in the first half. Oklahoma City's been a bottom 10, 15 team shooting the 3 ball this year, as opposed to last year when they were really good. So that was obviously good. And like I said, they did a great job in the first half of keeping Oklahoma City away from the rim. In the first quarter, they had twice as many shots from the short mid-range as they did from the rim. They had 10 short mid-range attempts, just 5 at the rim, which is a really good mark against an Oklahoma City team that drives and kicks it a bunch. So the drive and kick discipline, I thought, defensively was really good. And then the ball movement, too, for the Wolves was great in the first half. They had 14 assists on 21 made field goals, 66.7% assist percentage. That's above league average. It'd probably be right around the 10th spot overall for the season. So I thought even though Ant was getting walled up, I thought that they did a great job playmaking behind it. I thought Randall was really strong offensively in the first quarter and a half that he played. I thought that, maybe there were 1 or 2 too many isolations, but I thought, it was a game that called for him to be more of a scorer and go get his own. And I was fine with that, considering the matchup that he had going. Isaiah is obviously bigger than J-Dub, Jalen Williams. So would obviously like to see, Rudy knock down, Julius knock down more than 1 3 ball there. But still thought that that was really good. I'm gonna take a night off from talking about his defense in the third quarter, especially off the ball. I think Julius Randle might be one of the worst, if not the worst, off-ball defenders I've ever seen.
It's wild. Did you know that coming in? It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was quite this bad. So I'll leave it there. I'll take the night off outside of that. And then back to Ant a little bit too. I thought that Ant did a much better job in that fourth quarter of kind of blending some playmaking with scoring. Once he had more spacing, he had 5 points in the fourth, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. A lot of hockey assist potential opportunities there for Ant. It was only 1 of 5, but I didn't have a huge problem with the shots that he took necessarily. So that was a positive there.
Can I just ask you real quick, just because, it is fun always, just as a fan of the NBA, to watch 2 superstars, right? SGA versus Ant. Now, obviously, both teams and every team in the league has their own unique DNA about how they want to win, their strengths, how to maximize those, how to mask their weaknesses, things like that. SGA is that dude, right? He's that guy. We all know Ant can be that guy. He's done it before. He's got the ceiling. But this year, I don't want to say he's taken a step back by any means, but just not the 30-point going off nights and games that maybe we all kind of set the bar after they go to the Western Conference Finals. So, Marcus says here real quick, Ant got double and tripled this whole game while, SGA had nothing but 1 versus 1. It's kind of frustrating. What do you see when Ant gets doubled that the Wolves are having a hard time taking advantage of those opportunities? Because I assume eventually it should all balance out, but you got to make teams pay first, right?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with Ant. I don't think Ant's good enough at getting off the ball early enough where, really good players, what they can do is they can kind of wait for that second defender to come and then do an excellent job of getting rid of the ball and delivering an on-time, on-target pass to whomever the outlet is, and then how to play behind it. I mean, I always think of the prime James Harden Rockets. Harden was so devastatingly. He's probably the best one-on-one isolation scorer I've ever seen in my life, either him or Kyrie. And, but the way that Harden would get doubled in those situations, especially in pick and roll game, but they'd just have a spread floor around him and he would do such a good job of drawing that second defender, kicking it out. And then, whoever it was, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, whoever it would be awesome at playing behind that and finding open corner shooters or finding a roller or, having guys around him that would be able to cut. And I just don't think that the Timberwolves that play around him are good enough at moving without the ball, at least in the starting five to be able to fully take advantage of it. I think it obviously is way better when you introduce guys like Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo into the equation. And I think, and Jaden to a certain extent too. I think Minot's obviously better, but, I think Jaden can do a little bit more offensively. So, being able to place him with guys like that, I think makes it a little bit easier to exploit that defense. And that's why you saw it better in the fourth quarter when you had Dante and Naz, especially out there with Ant. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But Ant certainly can help himself more by getting off of it a little bit sooner. Mm-hmm. And then when he doesn't have the ball, instead of just kind of standing 35 feet away from the basket, try to collapse the backside of the defense to open up corner kick out or, cross-side corner kicks.
Get active.
Those types of things. Yeah. So I do certainly think it's fair to say that Ant has taken a step back this year because the step or if you do think he's taken a step forward, I certainly think it's fair to say that step forward has not been anywhere near what we expected it to be this season, especially considering how dangerous he was in the playoffs. I mean, he looked like one of the 5 best players in the league in the playoffs last season. And sure, I think that you have to give him a little bit of grace in terms of, going from Cat to Julius Randle and how that's impacted the spacing is certainly a little bit different. But even in games that he should totally dominate, we've seen him be, pretty mediocre for his standards. Mm-hmm. And I think Ant probably understands that. I think they're probably on him more than any other player because he loves to be coached hard. He loves to be held accountable by this coaching staff. And I think that's a huge reason why this coaching staff respects mm-hmm. Ant and why his teammates respect him. Yep. And it's a huge reason why the rest of the team respects the coaching staff too, because Ant demands that from this staff and they certainly coach him hard. So I think that, again, number one reason Ant's got to be better at getting off the ball and moving once he doesn't have it. Number two, I just think you got to put more guys around him that are good at playing, 4-on-3 in the backside or moving without the basketball or spotting up and shooting. Yeah. And I think the team we had last year, the Timberwolves had last year, was probably more well equipped to do that, especially in the playoffs. But there's a lot of time left for the Timberwolves to continue to grow. And mm-hmm. when you look at the rest of the landscape in the West, that's the number one reason why I'm not panicked about this team is there's still so much opportunity for the Timberwolves to go on another run. Mm-hmm. Coming into this game, they had won 9 of 13. Yeah. All 9 wins against teams above 500.
Huge.
There's still plenty of opportunity for them, especially once their schedule softens up after the new year, mm-hmm. to go on a run where they win 11 of 13 or go on a run where they win, 15 of 20 or something like that. And all of a sudden they're right there, in that 3, 4, 5 range where we kind of all expected them to be at the start of the season. So again, I'm not going to overreact to one game. I think hat tip to the Thunder. They were tremendous in what they wanted to do for the most part tonight. And no shame in coming up just a bit short on the road. So no, hang your head high after that one for sure. Couple minutes left. Let's talk about the Celtics game coming up Thursday night. Back at home, back at the Target Center. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. In your schedule, it's packed with work projects and more. It's so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with the licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, just real quick, I want to ask you about the Celtics game coming up this Thursday, back at home in the backyard at the Target Center. But first,
you brought up right before the break, 9 of 13 they've won, all 9 against teams above 500. They had won 3 straight coming into this game. What have you liked the most about this recent kind of winning streak and winning spurt of the last, 21 games or so?
Yeah, no question. I think, last 13 games.
13,
right?
Sorry.
Yeah. I think, first and foremost, I think the Timberwolves defensively have really been, have really been a lot better. And we've seen, prolonged stretches of them being really, really strong. And it's a really big reason why this team is now 6th in defensive rating. And why, for the most part, they've been a positive net rating team for the majority of the season. Their defensive rebounding numbers are really trending in the right direction, as are their offensive rebounding numbers. Last 5 games, they're 33.2% offensive rebound rate, well above the league average of 29% there. And defensive rebound rate of 73.4%, well above the league average of 70.9%. So I think that's been huge. Their points in the paint defense number has been great. Right about 43 points over the last 5. That's 4th best in the league. Again, well below the league average of 48.2%. So when you're looking at the Timberwolves in terms of their point differentials, they are plus 3.2 points per game. And if you take how many points in the paint they score per game, subtract that by how many points per game they give up, they're plus 3.2. That's 8th best in the league. Again, league average is going to, for all these differential numbers, the league average is going to be 0. And then second chance points, their differential is plus 1.6. That's 11th best in the league. And then for fast break points, they're plus 0.6. That's top. It's 14th in the league. So for them to be plus in all of those categories, I think has been really good. Those are all areas that really good teams tend to control. I think their turnover percentage too has been trending down. It's now below 15%, which is the league average over the last 5 games. And I think too, when you're seeing the Timberwolves take care of the ball a little bit better, I think that's when you're able to see kind of the offense get into more of a rhythm and see that kind of bench trio. I know Michael Grady called it the DNA lineup, which was fun to see.
Yeah.
I just think that, it's all kind of good things that you want to see kind of trending in the right direction for the most part. So their offensive rating has been about 111, 112, oscillating right in there, which is right around league average. And I think for a defense to be right around league average, or excuse me, for an offense to be right around league average when the defensive ceiling is this high and we've seen the prolonged stretches, I think you're gonna tend to see teams win more games than not, and kind of put yourself in positions to have a home run hitter and a star and Anthony Edwards, help get you to the finish line. So that's been fun to see. And tonight, I just think it was a situation where you saw OKC in a lot of those areas that I talked about,
right?
Really dominated. OKC's number 1 in paint differential, about plus 9 points per game. Minnesota lost that by 8.
Yep.
But another area where we're starting to see the Timberwolves play really well is fast break scoring. OKC was number 2 in the league in fast break differential, about plus 4.5. The Timberwolves actually won that by 6. And I think they've done a much better job of playing quickly in transition off of stops. And that's helped them get a little bit of easier offense and create some really good open 3-point opportunities. And that's where Dante DiVincenzo really thrives. So it's not a coincidence that they've been running off of stops more, playing with more pace, and DiVincenzo's helped getting going. And then, the biggest area that they struggled with was obviously the turnovers tonight. OKC's number 1 in opponent turnover percentage. They force opponents to turn it over on almost a 5th of their possessions, which is an amazing number.
Insane
in today's NBA.
Yeah.
And the Wolves had a turnover rate of 24% tonight. 1 of every 5 possessions they turned it over, or 1 of every 4 possessions they turned it over. And the points off turnover differential for OKC, they are plus 11 this year, number 1 in the league by a wide margin. And tonight the Wolves lost that by 24. So that was the game right there.
So real quick, how much more dangerous is OKC going to be when they get Chet back, Caruso? Maybe I'm missing a third guy as well.
Nope,
like
just those 2 really.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be certainly more dangerous offensively, just because I think it's going to be much more difficult to show 2 guys to SGA in the pick and roll game when you have Chet as a release valve that can pick and pop and shoot threes. and the spacing that they're able to play with is just right now they're playing 4 round 1 with Hartenstein in the middle. And I think, even tonight you're able to see Rudy Gobert sag off for the most part. And that's probably why OKC, only had 46 points in the paint instead of closer to 60 points in the paint, because Rudy was able to sag off and protect the rim a little bit. But when they're able to get those 5 out lineups going, and you can have SGA, Caruso, Dort, Jalen Williams, and Chet, that's a really dangerous proposition. But then, if a team wants to go big, like if you're playing the Mavs or you're playing, the Timberwolves, for instance, you can have Chet and Hartenstein play out there together, because Chet's a good enough 3-point shooter where, they can make it work. I think it might be like the Wolves sometimes, where that defense is going to be incredible, but the offense might be a little clunky at times, just because Chet doesn't do a whole lot with the ball, putting it on the deck and getting into the lane. So I think that'll be something to watch too. But getting Hartenstein and then getting Caruso for Giddey was an amazing move for them. So I think they're certainly going to be a more dangerous team come playoff time than they were last season.
Yeah, for sure. Red hot as is, but come playoff time for sure, especially if they hold on to that number 1 seed. Wolves Celtics this Thursday. We're back at home in the backyard at the Target Center, kind of running low on time. So just give me one thing that you're most looking forward to. Maybe it's a game within the game. Maybe it's a specific player, a matchup. Just give us one thing, 60 seconds. T-Wolves Celtics this Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Timberwolves perimeter players against the Celtics perimeter players in terms of Wolves offense against the Celtics defense. I think the Celtics have been really, really good at protecting the paint, protecting the rim. They've struggled a little bit defending the 3-point line. So I think if the Wolves can really move the ball against what I expect to see a lot of ball pressure and create some open 3-point looks, that's going to be huge. But you've got to defend the 3-point line on the other end too. The Celtics score the highest percentage of their points from the 3-point line among any team in the league. Almost half their points come from beyond the arc. And, conversely, they score the least amount of points, least or lowest percentage of their points in the paint. 35% of their points come from the paint. So, outside of that, it's going to be strength on strength. Boston doesn't turn it over. Their second turnover percentage. The Wolves have forced their opponents to turn it over at the 5th highest rate this season. So I think it's going to be a battle of, can the Wolves turn Boston over, and can the Wolves defend Boston to the 3-point line? And conversely, can Minnesota move the ball enough to create some open looks from the 3-point line, score from there? And then that'll kind of open things up and help Ant get into the paint. We're probably not going to see Kristaps Porzingis, who's got an ankle injury. We may not see Drew Holiday either, who's been, kind of in and out with I believe a shoulder issue. So we'll see if he plays. 100%. And last note. I know I didn't hit on it much, but hopefully we can get more Mike Conley making some shots. He was great, big man. Time tonight.
Oh, that was a breath of fresh air, man. That was really solid for sure. And speaking of Thursday versus the Celtics, if last year is any prelude, obviously T-Wolves Celtics, we had some great games last year between those two for sure. Great stuff, man. As always, great breakdown, great insight, great knowledge. 3-game win streak snap tonight. Final versus the Thunder, 113-105. T-Wolves dropped to 17-15 on the year. As always, hey, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat, game to game, venting, sometimes celebrating. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Keep up with all the action if you haven't already. Go follow Jack, too. He's on X at Borman13, and he's live from the Target Center during almost every home game as well. Celtics come to town Thursday, 6 p.m. tip-off. Catch you right here, same time, same place. But until then, sign